Welcome to BBC News, broadcasting to viewers in North America and around the world. My name is Lewis Vaughan-Jones. Our top stories. The White House blames North Korea for a trail of broken promises as President Trump cancels the summit with Kim Jong-un. Pyongyang says the move defies the world's wishes and it's willing to resolve differences with the US whenever, however. Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein is expected to hand himself in to police in New York within hours following allegations of sexual assault. An island off the coast of Yemen is declared a disaster zone after a powerful cyclone. At least 19 people are missing. And it saw a pedestrian too late. More questions about the safety of self-drive cars. Hello. North Korea says it's open to resolving issues with the US after President Trump abruptly cancelled next month's planned summit with Kim Jong-un, citing what he called Pyongyang's open hostility. He said North Korean officials had heavily criticised senior members of his administration, and the US stood ready for military action if Mr. Kim did anything, quote, foolish. North Korea said the president's announcement was not in line with the world's wishes. Well, our North America editor John Sopel has the story.
The historic would it, wouldn't it happen Singapore summit had hit the buffers, as many doubters had predicted. Donald Trump's extraordinary letter to Kim Jong-un, the expression of it. In it he wrote, "Sadly, based on the tremendous anger and open hostility displayed in your most recent statement, I feel it's inappropriate at this time to have this long-planned meeting." His letter also spoke about the power of the US nuclear arsenal and that the meeting was Kim's idea, not his. At the White House, a somber President Trump had this to say.
Based on the recent statement of North Korea, I have decided to terminate the planned summit in Singapore on June 12th. While many things can happen and a great opportunity lies ahead potentially, I believe that this is a tremendous setback for North Korea and indeed a setback for the world. Hopefully positive things will be taking place with respect to the future of North Korea. But if they don't, we are more ready than we have ever been before.
The legwork for it was being done by the President's Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. There were gasps around the world when it emerged he'd travelled to Pyongyang in total secrecy to meet the North Korean leader. Today, Mr. Pompeo was giving evidence to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and sought to explain what had changed the President's mind.
Over the past many days, we have endeavored to do what Chairman Kim and I had agreed, was to put preparation teams together to begin to work to prepare for the summit, and we had received no response to our inquiries from them.
The release of the President's letter coincided unerringly with the North Koreans playing host to a group of Western journalists invited to witness the destruction of a nuclear test site. But there was fury in Washington when Pyongyang put out a statement last night describing the Vice President as ignorant and stupid. And there seemed to be a threat. We can also make the US taste an appalling tragedy. At the heart of this is the demand for the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, a phrase that sounds simple but is open to vastly different interpretations. This might have been a historic summit in seeing these two leaders sit down at a table together. But as time went on, it became increasingly clear that's all it would be. Great expectations have been replaced by a cold dose of reality. John Sopel, BBC News, Washington.
Well, that's the perspective in Washington. What about the response from North Korea? Our correspondent Rupert Wingfield-Hayes joins me now from Seoul. So, Rupert, I suppose we better start with what has been the response from North Korea?
Well, we've had a surprisingly conciliatory response from North Korea so far, so no angry words in response, rather leaving the door open to dialogue. In a statement from the North Korean news agency said, "We express our willingness to sit down face-to-face with the US and resolve issues any time in any format." And then it went on to say, "Our commitment to doing our best for the sake of peace and stability for the world and the Korean Peninsula remains unchanged." So I think that's a mixture of both being conciliatory, but also I think the regime in Pyongyang certainly trying to cast President Trump and the US administration as the intransigent ones, the ones who are walking away from this summit, and that it is not North Korea that wants to pull out.
So we appear to be in a slightly strange situation here, Rupert, where North Korea seem to be trying to grasp for that moral high ground.
Yeah, I think so. Certainly North Korea will want to play this to its advantage with its ally China and with the South Korean government, which is also extremely upset about what has happened. I mean, the South Korean President Moon Jae-in also released a statement saying that he was perplexed and that it was very regrettable that the North Korean-US summit will not take place and that denuclearization of the peninsula cannot be abandoned. So the South Korean government is basically saying it is very upset that this has happened as well. And also, we understand, neither South Korea nor Japan were informed by the Trump administration that this was going to happen beforehand. So everybody has been taken by surprise. And I think in that context, Kim Jong-un and his regime are saying, well, look, we're doing everything we can. We wanted to go to talks. We're not walking away. It's America and it's President Trump that is doing this. And as you say, thereby trying to take the moral high ground in this situation.
Okay, another remarkable twist on the road in these negotiations. Rupert, thank you very much. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes there. American media is reporting that the former Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein is expected to turn himself into police to face allegations of sexual assault. He's denied having non-consensual sex with anyone. Well, David Willis is in Washington for us. So, a bit of a surprise. What is expected to happen tomorrow?
Well, Lewis, more than 7 months after the allegations against Harvey Weinstein first came to light, it's reported here that he is due to surrender in the morning to detectives in New York. Now, the precise nature of the charges isn't clear, but it's reported here that they relate to accusations by an aspiring actress called Lucia Evans, who met Harvey Weinstein in a nightclub back in 2004 and was then invited to an interview at his offices in New York where he sexually assaulted her, so she says. Now, New York detectives have apparently accumulated a vast trove of evidence against Harvey Weinstein. They've traveled as part of their investigation to Canada, to the United Kingdom, and in just the last few weeks to Los Angeles. And they investigated Harvey Weinstein back in 2015, of course, in New York, after a model claimed that he groped her, but no charges were laid against him. And indeed, Harvey Weinstein has consistently denied any allegations of non-consensual sex.
That's right. Of course, his denials have been consistent right from the beginning. But having said that, lots of people who have been following this and the whole Me Too movement and everything that came from it will perhaps be surprised it's taken us this long to get to this stage.
Yes, and there have been some expressions of exasperation in New York at the time it's taken for the district attorney there in Manhattan to get charges prepared. But you're absolutely right. These allegations, there were numerous allegations, some of them from A-list Hollywood stars, people like Gwyneth Paltrow, Angelina Jolie, Salma Hayek, Ashley Judd, the list goes on and on and on, all of them claiming sexual misconduct on the part of Harvey Weinstein. And as you say, it all gave birth to the Me Too movement. Tarana Burke, who's one of the founders of the Me Too movement, said Harvey Weinstein turning himself into the authorities marked, as she put it, a turning point in the conversation. Lewis.
Okay, David, thanks for that. Yeah, expected to hand himself in New York Friday morning. Okay. The Hollywood actor Morgan Freeman has apologised after 8 women reportedly claimed he subjected them to harassment or inappropriate behaviour. The US network CNN says the incidents happened on film sets and at Freeman's production company. In a statement, he says he never intended to make anyone feel uneasy, and he apologised to anyone if anyone felt uncomfortable or disrespected. Yemen has declared a state of emergency on the island of Socotra as a tropical storm intensified, flooding villages and capsizing boats. At least 19 people are missing. Socotra lies between the Arabian Peninsula and the Horn of Africa and has been largely untouched by Yemen's 3-year-old war. Lebu Diseko reports.
This is what a disaster province looks like. Hundreds of people were forced to leave their homes as Cyclone Mukunu hit Socotra. Not everyone made it to safety in time, with many trapped in isolated areas. Fears are growing for their safety, with the storm expected to get worse.
I call on the authorities and the government to focus on this region because all the waters have collected in this area.
This island is under the control of Yemen's internationally recognized government, whose president is in exile. The 3-year civil war in the country complicating rescue efforts. Authorities say they can't handle relief efforts alone, and they're asking for urgent help. The island is famous for its unique plants and natural beauty. But the fear is that if the necessary help doesn't come in time, this could be less like paradise and more like a living hell. Lebu Diseko, BBC News.
Well, stay with us on BBC News. Still to come, a root and branch reform for art. The Italian sculptor whose trees are taking on nature.
This morning, an Indian Air Force plane.
This is BBC News, the latest headlines. The White House has blamed North Korea for a trail of broken promises after President Trump cancelled next month's summit with Kim Jong-un. Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein is expected to hand himself into police in New York within hours following allegations of sexual assault. Okay, well, President Trump's surprise announcement came just hours after North Korea said it had dismantled tunnels at its only nuclear test site. Reporters at the Punggye-ri site in the northeast said they had witnessed a huge blast. Ben Tracy of CBS News was there.
We were on the site for about 9 hours, and it was surreal to see it in person after reporting on this for so long. Now, the North Koreans brought a small group of media there for a very specific purpose. They wanted to show that they were decommissioning, that they were destroying this nuclear test site. So what they did is they blew up the 3 remaining test tunnels at that site. They claimed that 2 of those tunnels were still usable, that they could have conducted further tests there, but they put explosives inside and they blew them up. Before they did that, they actually opened up the tunnels. We were able to walk right up to them, see the explosives inside, and then they removed us to some viewing stands further away and blew them up. They then told us to walk back up towards the tunnel to see it in person to verify that indeed it had been closed. Now, the problem is we're journalists. We're not nuclear experts. So there was no one on site, no outside expert there to verify that what North Korea claims it has done, which is nuclear test site, has actually occurred. And we did ask our government minder if they're going to allow somebody in to do that, and he said he doesn't think so because they don't feel that they need somebody else to say that they've done what they say they have now done.
Ben Tracy of CBS News reporting from North Korea for us. A report into a fatal crash involving a self-driving Uber car has found it couldn't identify the victim as a pedestrian until it was too late to stop. A woman was killed in Arizona in March when she was hit by the vehicle as she crossed the road. Here's our North America technology reporter, Dave Lee.
Elaine Hertzberg was detected by Uber's self-driving software as an unknown object. Then it thought she was a vehicle, or maybe a bicycle. The car didn't slow down, and Ms. Hertzberg became the first person on record to be killed by an autonomous car. The vehicle, a modified Volvo, had its emergency braking system disabled, Uber said this was to avoid erratic driving behaviour. It is not clear if this system would have saved Ms Hertzberg had it been switched on. The National Transportation Safety Board's report is not the final say on the matter. Its full, conclusive ruling is several months away at least. But what is known so far about the incident raises serious questions about the safety of Uber's self-driving programme. The company had its permit to test the vehicles in Arizona revoked, but said it hoped to test in other places, including the city of Pittsburgh. However, that came as news to the city's mayor. Uber did not tell me of today's announcement, he said this week, and I was forced to learn about it through social media reports. This is not the way to rebuild a constructive working relationship with local government, especially when facing a public safety matter. Uber said it had launched its own safety review into the incident and had brought in outside advisors to help the company move forward. Uber once referred to self-driving cars as critical to the future of the company, but with testing on hiatus, it's falling well behind in the race to offer full autonomous driving. Dave Lee, BBC News, San Francisco.
Russia's foreign ministry has dismissed the findings of a Dutch-led team of investigators that says Russian armed forces were involved in the MH17 air disaster. All 298 people on board were killed when the Malaysia Airlines passenger jet was shot down over war-torn eastern Ukraine 4 years ago. The plane had been flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. Anna Holligan reports.
Images, mostly sourced from social media, provide a catalogue of evidence.
It can clearly be seen the huge vehicles disrupt traffic and attract a lot of attention.
It was the summer of 2014. The Boeing 777 passenger jet was shot out of the sky. The Russian-made surface-to-air missile was driven across the Russian border into Ukraine and fired from a field that was under the control of Russian-backed separatists at the time. The investigators highlighted 7 markers on the launcher that allowed them to create a fingerprint that identified the exact vehicle involved. A serial number on the missile casing showed it was a 9M38 series Buk made in Moscow.
The Buk Taylor, we think it's from the 53rd Anti-Missile Brigade. It's a special part of the Russian army who is normally doing work to defend the air, and one of their vehicles, one of their Buk Taylors, as we call it, has been used on this 17th of July to down MH17.
Any suspects would eventually be put on trial here in the Netherlands after Russia blocked efforts to try to set up an international tribunal. And the Dutch legal system allows people to be tried in absentia, and that means that even if the country in which the suspects are currently residing refused to extradite them, the trials could still go ahead in their absence. Prosecutors confirmed they have identified a few dozen persons of interest, but have refused to name names to avoid jeopardizing any future prosecution. But they need more witnesses.
We urgently appeal to everyone, anywhere in the world, do you recognise the handwriting of the number on the Venturi? Or do you know someone who can tell us what these numbers mean?
And they specifically appealed to staff from the 53rd Brigade of the Russian Federation, their family and friends, to get in touch. Russia has always denied any involvement in the disaster that cut short 298 lives. Anna Holligan, BBC News, Munich.
A court in the UK has found an army sergeant guilty of trying to murder his wife by tampering with her parachute. Emile Cilliers was deeply in debt and involved in multiple affairs at the time of the incident. His wife, Victoria Cilliers, fell 4,000 feet and miraculously survived. What's more, it wasn't even the first time her husband had tried to kill her. Duncan Kennedy has the story.
Emile and Victoria Cilliers, husband and wife, but a couple where he wanted her to die. An experienced skydiver who'd made 2,500 jumps. This was Victoria Cilliers during one of her flights. A flight exactly like this one, over the same airfield in Wiltshire where she had her accident. Both her main and reserve chutes failed to open. She fell 4,000 feet. And only lived because she hit this ploughed field. Detectives went to the airbase near Salisbury and discovered that Emile Cilliers was the last to handle the parachute the day before Victoria's accident. It was in this toilet that Emile Cilliers brought Victoria Cilliers' parachute to tamper with. He moved strings on the main chute and cut pieces off the reserve chute, all to sabotage it. What he hoped for was that when she leapt out of the aircraft, she would jump to her death. The police organised this demonstration in the toilet to see if there was space to sabotage the parachute. There was.
What was happening at the locker when you got there?
But after his arrest, Cilliers refused to speak about the chute.
Okay.
Incredibly, a week before the parachute incident, Cilliers had also tampered with this gas pipe at his home in a separate attempt to kill Victoria by explosion. His children were upstairs at the time.
I couldn't believe it.
Long before Victoria, Emile Cilliers had fathered 2 children with this woman, Nikki Shepherd, who doesn't want her face shown. This is her with Emile, someone she says who was highly manipulative. In her first TV interview, she describes him as dangerous.
I would describe him as, if I can use the word, psychopathic. I'm happy that I dodged a bullet. You know, so to start with, it's the charm, and this is why people like him. And then manipulative. You know, everything else is sort of, you don't find out until you've been hurt by it.
Emile Cilliers had wanted Victoria Cilliers dead for an insurance payout and because he had a mistress. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
Next, a tree is a spectacular creation, a perfect sculpture. These are the words of the renowned Italian artist Giuseppe Pannoni, who for 50 years has been creating sculptures of trees. Now, his works go on show in the natural setting of the Yorkshire Sculpture Park in the UK. He's been talking about his passion for trees to our arts editor, Will Gompertz.
As views go, this is not a bad one. It is the green and pleasant land of the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, where Mother Nature provides a gallery for the modern art of Barbara Hepworth, Henry Moore and James Turrell's Sky Space. This is a place where even the trees look like sculptures. Well, hang on, this one is a sculpture by the world-renowned Italian artist Giuseppe Pannoni.
So Giuseppe, tell me about the rock in the tree.
The tree is related to the idea of growing of a tree that is attracted by light.
Yes.
And the rock is related to the idea of the gravity force.
Pannoni is like the David Attenborough of art. He spends his life observing nature to make work that heightens our awareness of its beauty and power. The tree, he says, is the perfect sculpture, because it balances the weight of life, as all living things must do, with a poetic fluidity.
And tree is between the two worlds, the underground and the upper side. So I have done this piece that is horizontal, and in this point there was a branch. And I cut the branch, I put clay, and I have done the print on my hand.
Is this in a way a comment on the tree of life?
Yeah, if you want to have a, it's possible. It's possible.
Who's a better sculptor, nature or you?
I don't know. The better sculptor, sure, nature. But I am happy to be closer to the real nature.
I suppose the answer is to come along and judge for yourself. Nature's wood or Pannoni's bronzes. Will Gompertz, BBC News, Yorkshire Sculpture Park.
Will Gompertz there, trying to help us see the wood from the trees. Right, before we go, let's take a look at these pictures. This is a bear cub making his debut appearance at a zoo in Belgium. And if you look closely, look at his eyes there. It's a clue to his name. This is part of the spectacled bear family for obvious reasons. He looks smarter than your average bear, doesn't he? Native to tropical Andes. It's very rare and vulnerable, but he looks like he's having quite a nice time there, doesn't he? OK, you can get in touch with me on Twitter. I'm at L Vaughan Jones. There's lots more on the website. This is BBC News.